Step parents, stop doing this if you want peace in your home.
So today we're going to be talking about 3 things that you might be doing that's causing stress and anxiety within your step family.
And you may not even realize it.
Yep. So number one, do not say anything negative to or about the stepkids.
And why can't I say anything negative to the stepkids, David?
Well, if you say something negative to them, it will not be taken well, and you are creating a negative interaction, and so you're making withdrawals from their emotional bank, so to speak. And so
When you haven't put deposits in their
yeah, so there's
emotional bank.
nothing in there to be pulling out, and you're overdrawn.
And the bio parents can tell the stepkids something, which would be their kids something, and it's taken completely different because of those biological bonds.
Yep. Yep. So stay away from that. I mean, it's the same thing as like you're at work, you don't have a good relationship with somebody, and you're telling them what to do or offering your feedback that they don't want. They look at you and go, who are you? Right? But if you got a friend you have a relationship with and you want to make a comment, even if it could be negative about, let's say they have an idea and they're like, what do you think about it? And you say something that's negative, and they're going to be like, well, you know what? You have a point there.
And
So,
let's say not necessarily negative, but not positive.
right. I guess that means there's neutral. All right. So why not say anything about the stepkids that's negative?
Because if I say something about the stepkids to you that's negative, my partner, you're going to hear, you're a crappy dad. You're not a good parent. You should teach your kids this. So, for instance, if I say, David, your kid is so lazy, what do you hear?
That I'm a crappy parent and I should do a better job of raising these hellions.
Yep, that's what you hear.
Yep.
And a lot of times, what we hear is not what was said.
Nope.
But there is no way that you can say anything negative to your partner without them getting defensive.
Well, the other thing too is if you both have kids, it turns into a tit for tat. Well, your kid, well, I mean, that's just the way it works oftentimes. Nobody wins in that, but that's just what happens.
Yeah, because I feel like if you say something about my kid, and if I retaliate by saying something about your kid, mine will outweigh what my kid's done or what you said.
Well, it comes down to, or yours is not perfect either, and you're not a great parent either. Don't attack me for something that your own kid is doing, or they're doing something completely different. It's
Right.
like it's not even relevant,
Right.
but that's just what people tend to do. So,
And that's not saying you can't say anything about the stepkids to your partner. Over time, those relationships are built, and your partner and the stepkid will realize that what you're saying is not out of judgment or criticism, and instead it's out of love.
right. Which, this is a good time to say, since we didn't do it before, that these tips are about step families who are in crisis. They're not doing very well. If you're in a good place with your step family and you're able to say things to your step kids that could even be negative, but they take them in a good way. When I say negative, it could be go brush your teeth or you stink, go take a bath. I mean,
Don't
there's different levels of relationships and there's different levels of what you can say to somebody and it be acceptable. It's no
Right.
different with kids.
But nachoing is about taking the target off of your back and lowering stress in the blend.
Right. And helping build that relationship, naturally so that it is a more lasting relationship.
Right. And another reason not to say anything about the stepkids is to family members. For instance, we're at Thanksgiving, everybody's sitting around the table. The grandparent leans over to you and says, Hey, how's little Johnny doing in school? And you say, Well, he's doing okay. He's still struggling a little bit in math. That can be turned around to Lori said little Johnny was stupid
Yeah.
and was failing school.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the more that you talk to somebody about things like that and they start talking to other people? You've seen it, I'm sure, before, where by the time it makes it around to half a dozen people, the stories change drastically.
I remember doing that like in kindergarten,
Right.
but I was a bad kid.
You're still a bad kid.
So when it got to me, whatever the person told me, I changed it on purpose.
Oh, gosh. You're that guy.
I thought that was the fun part of the game, to see how different you could make it by the end.
Yeah. So you were a button pusher. You didn't know it.
Yeah. So don't get sucked in talking about the stepkids. It's a trap. It is a trap.
All right. Number 2.
Number 2, do not take things personally, because you realize and understand that it's not about you as a person most of the time. It is what you represent. Yeah. As a step parent, you often represent that the bio parents will never get back together. And interestingly enough, that often happens more when dad gets remarried. When dad gets remarried, it seems to, mom can be married 18 times, but dad gets married that one time and it's, oh, great, this person is keeping my parents from getting back together.
Yeah.
Or it could be that their parent is not in their life for whatever reason, or not in their life like they want them to be. And here you are playing good mommy or good daddy to them, and it makes them miss their parent or makes them wish their parent was like that.
Yeah. We see that often where a kid has got a parent who's either passed away, they're in jail, strung out on drugs, mental issues. It runs the gamut. The stepmom typically is the one who will step in, and they're doing everything they can to, just pour love on this kid, buy them all kind of stuff, take them places, whatever. But they get this massive backlash. And so they're like, well, then I'm not doing it enough. So they do it more and they get a bigger backlash. And then they're like, well, I don't understand what's going on. But what's typically going on is the kid is saying, I really want my bio parent to be doing this, and they can't. Right. And so now I'm resenting you because you're representing the fact that my bio parent can't or won't do what you're doing for me.
Right. And even if the stepchild leaves a note that says, I hate you, Lori Sims. Exclamation point, exclamation point.
Yeah. If your stepkid's leaving a note like that, I want to know how they know her.
They probably do hate me. But even if they're leaving a note that has your name and is addressed to you, it's not always about you. Yeah. You're an easy target. We joke that instead of a step parent, it should be target.
Yeah, that's your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the family's target.
Yeah. There's so many things around that, because it could be, well, we used to go to Disney World every year until you got with Lori, and then now we don't go to Disney anymore, and that's why we don't like her.
Yep, it's all Lori's fault.
And it's like, well, that has nothing to do with it. Or the colors on the walls changed.
Yep. Or we used to be able to jump on the couch and run around the house until Lori came.
Well, that is true.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother show. All right. So don't take things personally. It's not always about you. It's what you represent. Mother Teresa, God bless her soul, could be in that role, and that child is going to have an issue, most likely. Yeah. And just so you know, the hardest relationships in a step family are a stepmother and a stepdaughter. Just so you know.
Yep.
All right. Number 3.
All right.
Don't parent your stepkids.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It's like we mentioned earlier. You don't have that foundation. You don't have those biological bonds. There is a difference between adulting and parenting. Adulting is making sure that little Susie doesn't go stab little Johnny with a knife.
Right.
Adulting is making sure that little Susie and little Johnny have lunch if they're not old enough to prepare it themselves. That's adulting.
Yep.
Parenting is, little Susie, I'm going to take your iPad away if you don't eat all your lunch. That's parenting.
Yeah. You're coming up with consequences or enforcing consequences.
Discipline. You're disciplining.
Yeah. And this is a problem that you and I had
What? We had no problems.
among many others, but
You had problems.
we where we went wrong with this was when we got married. I was like, okay, and this is me talking to myself. I'm going to take Lori and plop her right into that role of mother and wife. Right? Well, the role of wife was available. The role of mother was not available. They had a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So by you stepping in that role and by me expecting you to do that, I put expectations on you that were not fair and they were not reasonable. And the kids they revolted because of that. And you
I'm
felt
lucky to be alive, folks.
and you felt like that you were doing a disservice if you weren't doing those things because like I know you're gonna step up and do the best job you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, this is my new role and I got to be the best I can be at it. And this is where we hear people walk in and like, I'm going to be super mom.
The gung-ho stepmom.
Yeah, super stepmom. And I'm going to do all this stuff. And, that's typically what happens. And it blows up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
It honestly, it doesn't work most of the time. There are a few times it does. It's funny that we see sometimes where people's like, I'm in my second blend for whatever reasons. The first blend was super easy. And I had a great relationship with the stepkids. I parented them. It was great. Mm-hmm. And then now I find myself in this next blend and nothing is working the way it did before.
Right. And people that are in the same blend and everything was great the first 3 years or the first 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or have been great since we started last week.
Yeah.
But once you go, I mean, it changes like life. There's hurdles, there's obstacles, there's challenges.
I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have coached everything from we haven't yet got married to we've been married for 30 years. Mm-hmm. I think was the longest one. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about blended step family, 30 years. Mm-hmm. The challenges don't go away at all. We still have challenges. We just have the tools to deal with them. And we see them coming oftentimes and we can avoid them. Whereas before we would run smack dab into them.
And we often, I think, joke about them because we know that they're not things that are going to blow up our relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think once that you and I decided many, many years ago when we decided to start nachoing, once we decided that divorce wasn't an option, it made it easier to have hard conversations and it made it easier to make light of tough situations.
Yeah. Well, in that,
not making light, you know what I'm saying?
Well, we learned how to communicate with one another and the communication style that works best for each other.
Right.
And that's makes a massive difference because I know I can come to you and have a tough conversation. I know what I can say, know what I maybe want to say differently. And it just helps. It helps. I mean, it's probably one of the number one things I would suggest for people to learn is how to communicate with your significant other.
Mm-hmm. And we will talk more about that.
Absolutely.
Some other time. All right. So those are your 3 things. Mm-hmm. Let's recap.
All right.
Number 1, don't say anything negative to or about the stepkids. Mm-hmm. Number 2, don't take it personally. Mm-hmm. Unless you are just this hateful person and you threw all their toys away and they write you a note that says, "Dear Lori, I hate you because you threw all my toys away." That's about you.
Yes.
That's about you. But otherwise, it's not about you.
Right.
It's what you represent. Mm-hmm. And number 3 was, do not parent your stepkids.
Yeah. Leave it to the bio parent.
That's their job.
Here's the other thing I'll say about that. And this tends to happen with guys. So listen up, fellas, because you're dropping the ball here.
Uh-oh.
When you have the stepmom that comes into your life, it is often the case, and I did this because I know, it is often the case that you take all of your parenting roles that you have and you like, delegate. Here you go, have at it.
I don't even think it's a delegation as much as it's a complete handover.
It's abdication. So it's like, I'm not even doing it anymore.
Yeah.
It's yours.
This is your job now.
Yep. Appreciate it.
And not that you married me with the thought of she's going to be treated like the mother of my children.
No, because I wasn't what I was looking for. But I see the same mistake that I made there. I see over and over and over again with men doing this. Mm-hmm. The problem that's bigger than that is that most men don't see it. And even when confronted with it, I hear things like, well, what good is she if she can't XYZ? And I'm like, what? Why did you marry her so that she would do that? Like, you didn't marry a wife, you married her for a mom for your kids. And they're like, no, I'd do that. What? That's what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So, I just encourage you men, step up, do the parenting of your kids. And it doesn't mean...
And some women.
Yeah, and some women. But it doesn't mean that it always has to be that way. We are talking specifically about you step families, that things aren't going well. Mm-hmm. And you're not figuring this thing out. We're asking you to do these steps, stay away from these 3 things that we're talking about today, and let's see if the pressure comes off. And then let's work on those relationships. Let's work on healing the hurts, building the bonds, fixing the issues, and then we can move forward and we can have a very different relationship as time moves forward.
Right.
All right.
All right.
That is our show for today, folks.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe so you will be notified when we release new videos.
Yeah, or share it with somebody that you know needs to hear it. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Hasta la pasta.